As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
I want to make sure we talk about it also because I do think it's an interesting development. And the headline here is Ontario to set aside $1 million over 2 years for esports scholarship program. So this is the Ontario government, Ontario province in Canada, says they're launching a new scholarship for post-secondary students enrolled in programs related to esports. It's setting aside $1 million over 2 years, which will offer financial assistance to students in programs related to game design, development, marketing, and innovation industry. The funding will be made available through publicly supported colleges and universities, and it starts this fall. We have seen esports scholarships before being offered by the schools themselves. We've seen them being offered by like individuals who, put together these scholarships to, support maybe a specific subgroup or, a specific type of person within the gaming industry. I think this is the first time I've seen this supported at the government level. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong there. How important is this of a development in your minds in terms of the legitimacy of esports as a career choice? Jimmy, maybe start with you. Yeah, professor at UC Irvine.
When you have any acknowledgement from any organization, depending on certain certain radical groups, it's usually a good thing for an organization to like what you're doing, to approve of you, to verify you, and especially when it's I think a governmental organization, just because that makes you therefore eligible for other government consideration, right? Grants potentially, things of that nature. So,
meaning, should government be giving esports scholarships? Like, is that something they should be meddling in? Does this raise the profile of esports, and we want to see governments everywhere? So, states in the U.S., all the provinces in Canada. Like, even if we keep a North American focus here, is this something we want to see public funding going towards because we believe this is the future?
The should question is difficult to answer because I'm less familiar with other programs that government is currently funding. I would say if you look at whatever body that they've already approved and that they are active with and are funding, does esports meet that? I mean, this is what they did, right? They have a process, they have other funding considerations and other groups of people and initiatives that they get behind. They looked at esports and said it meets all of the same criteria, therefore we're funding it. That's most likely the process that was taken here. So if that's the case, then that's a really big step for esports because it puts it on the same level as tennis or certain academic programs or other extracurriculars that they, again, compared us to and said, yeah, it meets those burdens, meets that minimum threshold. So, whether or not you're arguing against should the government be spending our tax dollars on kids playing video games, that's a sterner argument that I think opposition to this would pose. And that's then again where we would raise the increased GPAs of gamers, the increased social adaptation in the classroom and confidence and mental health and kind of that socialization that we're seeing sweep through schools. Again, this is a great thing, I think, where a lot of the ed tech companies that we've had on the show in very recent episodes would probably be supportive of this because, again, it's putting their work, their program, and their considerations on par where they're no longer at a disadvantage saying, hey, you need to look at us too, right? It's getting that fair treatment.
I mean, Lindsay, you have a policy background. I'm curious your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the professor did a good job of explaining why this is a big deal, but just to reiterate his point that these are tax dollars we're talking about being spent in public education on esports, and so that's that's a huge shift in the way that we think about esports programming. But I think it's an important one because I think it signifies that we're finally moving out of the whole esports and gaming is only for the kid in the parents' basement and it's bad for you and blah, 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 and all those things that we know to not be true. This is basically the polar opposite of Tipper Gore and the gaming trials of the 90s. And I'm glad that 20 or 30 years later, we're finally moving past that and actually for once doing something positive for kids that are interested in gaming. I think it's a great way to spend money, and just like the professor said, any kind of investment in education in this space is really important and exciting. So I highly recommend listening to his take, even though I just paraphrased it.
No, it's a good point. I'll just add before we move on. It's scholarships are much needed. So these esports students can pay for school when the Canadian government seizes their bank account. So it's one of those things. It's just a helpful necessity.